Welcome to the delightful Lake District village of Grasmere, located on the pristine River Rothay, just a stone's throw away from Windermere, England's largest lake. One of the most popular places to visit when you're in the Lake District, Grasmere may only be a small countryside village, but it's renowned for its natural beauty and literary connections, with the famed Romantic poet William Wordsworth famously associated with the village. We'll learn about all that and more on this walk around Grasmere. However, we begin on the historic church bridge, which serves as the entry to the village of Grasmere from the east, crossing the River Rothay, which flows down from the mighty fells that dominate the skyline around Grasmere. Fells aren't the only thing you'll see soaring above the village's streets, however, as here we find ourselves just beside St Oswald's Church, undergoing restoration as we're walking by today, and one of the most prominent landmarks in Grasmere. Dating from the 14th century, St Oswald's is also one of the oldest churches in the Lake District, although the story of the site on which it stands goes back even further into history. Around 1400 years ago, in the 7th century AD, this point in Grasmere was the site of a small chapel that was founded by none other than the Anglo-Saxon King Oswald of Northumbria. Oswald's chapel stood for centuries, before eventually being replaced by the grand church that we know today, which is dedicated to the Northumbrian king and saint, who is said to have been the most powerful ruler in Britain for his time, and a benevolent ruler to boot. However, King Oswald isn't the only famous figure associated with Grasmere's parish church, as the graveyard here is also the home of the tomb of the world-famous poet William Wordsworth. Here on the edge of the churchyard, this fenced-off area is the resting place of many members of the Wordsworth family, and as the home of the famed Romantic poet of the late 18th and early 19th century, it has also become a bit of a place of pilgrimage for literary fans from all over the world. For William Wordsworth himself, however, the village of Grasmere was home, and he called this place the loveliest spot that man hath ever found. But as we continue walking through the gorgeous churchyard of St Oswald's, where exactly would you find this undoubtedly lovely spot on a map? Well, as you can see, Grasmere is located right in the heart of the Lake District, just 4 miles north of the famous Windermere, and 10 miles east of Scafell Pike, England's highest mountain. As such, Grasmere, while a perfect place to take a relaxing stroll among some beautiful scenery, is also right at the heart of much of the adventure tourism that attracts so many people to the Lake District each year, with hiking opportunities aplenty on the outskirts of the village. However, while there is a lot to see and do outside Grasmere, the small village centre is also full of attractions, one being the delightful Wordsworth Daffodil Garden that we're strolling through here, and which was laid out in tribute to the poet in the 2000s, converting a once disused and neglected space beside the churchyard into a beautiful garden that also helps to raise funds for the historic church next door. The area around the church is a popular visitor spot in the village today, with this small cottage just outside the Daffodil Garden an absolute must for everybody who passes through Grasmere. Built in 1630, this cottage served as Grasmere's humble village school for 220 years, but it's now the home of the famous Grasmere Gingerbread, which, as you can see, visitors queue every day to sample. Grasmere Gingerbread is perhaps the village's most famous export, and this cottage serves it according to the recipe invented in 1854 by a woman named Sarah Nelson. But what in particular is so special about Sarah Nelson's gingerbread? Well, Grasmere Gingerbread is a bit of a unique brand of gingerbread, with a distinctive spicy sweet taste woven into a treat that's much like a biscuit crossed with a cake. But gingerbread is more than just a simple souvenir found in Grasmere today, and as we pass by the exquisite Wordsworth Hotel here on Church Stile, Sarah Nelson's gingerbread is deeply intertwined with the long history of this village. After moving away from her birthplace in nearby Bowness, Nelson began to sell gingerbread on a tree stump outside her cottage here in Grasmere, and it soon became the talk of the town, popular with all the village locals. Her cottage soon became the centre of a culinary craze, with Nelson's gingerbread popularly used as a reward for the children of the village. With her cottage located just beside the church, Sarah Nelson liked to give her gingerbread to Grasmere's young rush-bearers, children who participated in the village's traditional rush-bearing ceremony, in which locals would bring grasses to lay on the church floor so as to protect against the muddy earthen floor inside the building that would otherwise become a quagmire in the wettest months of the year. Rush-bearing was a common practice in churches all over England, although today Grasmere is one of just a handful of places that still carry out the traditional ceremony, typically held in early July. For the vast majority of Grasmere's existence, the church has been right at the centre of everyday village life, and as we pass by the old Methodist Church here, now a cafe, you'll still find the new village school just beside the historic St Oswald's, whose churchyard hosts many of Grasmere's most historic graves, not only those of the Wordsworth family, but also of Sarah Nelson herself, who died in 1904 at the grand old age of 88, and whose loss left a major hole in the lives of all those in Grasmere at the time. In fact, Nelson was so important to the village that, upon her death, the lanes of Grasmere were lined with mourners, and her funeral inside the parish church was packed with attendees, who then laid her to rest just beside her beloved old cottage. A stone's throw from the parish churchyard, however, we're now walking through Grasmere's bustling village green, where many visitors to the village take a chance to stop and bask in the glorious sunshine. Despite being a village of little more than 1,000 people, Grasmere is often chock full of people in the summer months, as one of the most popular spots in the Lake District, with not only history and nature drawing people here, but also a range of boutique shops and cafes that do a roaring trade during the holidays. Of course, no trip to the Lake District would be complete without making your way out of its many gorgeous towns and villages, and out into the stunning mountainous countryside, possibly the most spectacular in all of England. As we can see up ahead, Grasmere's dramatic natural surroundings are an irresistible appeal for many visitors to the village and wider region. But it's not just hiking and climbing that you can enjoy outside of the village. For one, Wordsworth fans will want to take a trip out to the hamlet of Rydal to the east of central Grasmere, where you'll find this, Dove Cottage, the place where William Wordsworth once lived for 9 years alongside his sister Dorothy, during a period in which he wrote many of his most famous works, including the acclaimed poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, also known by the alternative name Daffodils, the inspiration behind the Wordsworth Daffodil Garden that we walked through earlier. Of course, while Wordsworth travelled the length and breadth of Britain, he was one of many poets inspired by the beauty of the Lake District. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, for example, inspired by the scenery of Ullswater, which you'll find in the northeastern corner of the Lake District. Wordsworth, born in nearby Cockermouth, was just one of a famous group of writers known as the Lake Poets. The Lake Poets were all romantic poets that lived in this region during the early 19th century, when the Lake District was still a little bit wild and mysterious, out of reach for many everyday people. But while this mountainous region was once isolated from the rest of the country by its landscape, the Lake District began to open up throughout the 19th century, as tales of adventurous trips in a dramatic landscape whetted the appetite of many later visitors, who sought to experience the Lake District's mystical charm for themselves. That charm and mystique still remains to this day, only made stronger by the legacy of the Lake Poets, and the reputation of gorgeous villages like Grasmere, that has for a long time stretched far beyond the local area. Back in the late Victorian era, Sarah Nelson's gingerbread was so good that word of it spread far and wide, and people would travel from across Britain to Grasmere to sample it, during some of the first steps towards the modern tourist industry that dominates the village today. Tourism in Grasmere has brought much change over the last century and a half, as the village has shifted from a primarily agricultural settlement to a modern visitor destination, with the building of the village hall just here coming in 1903. The village hall was designed to host all of Grasmere's main events, not just for local matters and gatherings, but also conferences, concerts and more, hosted within one of the prettiest parts of the country by far. While Grasmere is still only a small village, the advent of tourism has caused the settlement to swell in size, as it was originally based entirely around St Oswald's Church by the River Rothay, but it has begun to extend outwards over the years to accommodate ever-growing numbers of visitors, who were initially granted access to this part of the world with the arrival of the railways in the mid-19th century. Now, Grasmere itself never had a railway station, but owing to the appeal of its gingerbread, and likely its literary legacy too, it was one of the main destinations for tourists to the Lake District anyway, with hordes of buses and charabancs ferrying visitors from Windermere Station a few miles away to and from this village. Today, Grasmere is easily accessible by public transport, with buses between Windermere and Keswick stopping off in the village centre, and in peak season, a direct open-top bus service that links the famous lake with this village, specially geared up for visitors. Now, the Lake District is a part of England that is said to suffer from a degree of over-tourism, and while it's certainly extremely busy at the height of summer, looking around us here you'll notice that you have the entire open sky around you, with the opportunity to walk just a few minutes out of the busy centre of Grasmere into lush, untouched countryside. You can of course go even further, and tackle some of the dramatic hills, or fells as they're known in this part of the world, with countless beautiful peaks to be found that offer stunning views of the surrounding landscape. The most adventurous will of course want to take on Scafell Pike, England's highest mountain, which stands at an imposing height of 3,209 feet, or 978 metres. If mountain climbing isn't your thing, Grasmere is also surrounded by cascading waterfalls, wide open fields and pristine lakes, one of the very best being the achingly pretty Rydal Water nearby. Sadly, we won't have time to make our way out into the countryside today, as we're coming to the end of our walk around wonderful Grasmere, a village full of history, energy and truly beautiful scenery. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're looking forward to visiting Grasmere for yourself sometime soon.